The best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmets casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Tick your check. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just dropped. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
Welcome back, DFS Army. This is FantasyFling taking another look back at the DraftKings Milly Maker Week 15. It was a crazy lineup that won it, and we're also going to get into some MME strategy of top DFS pros. A lot of the pros that kind of faded Henry and really the Chargers game in general. The pass catchers on the Chargers side and really went way over the field on a lot of the 5 to 6K running backs. It was a mixed bag for a lot of the pros, but we are going to get into that. So let's take a look. All right, so my write-up over at dfsarmy.com, the Milly Maker review for week 15. So this was a crazy lineup, as I said. It featured a lineup construction that really we hadn't seen this year, and as far as the build winning, and really just the number of points that were scored for that type of build. So what we had here was a heavy stack, onslaught stack, but the game didn't really go off to a high point where, you would have thought this lineup would have made its way to the top of the leaderboard. So for it to have an onslaught stack and really to be a low scoring week, it's kind of something that you don't see very often in the Milly Maker for sure. But this lineup had Patrick Mahomes, Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon was back this week. He was in the Milly Maker last week, stacked in a game stack with Jerry Jeudy. But this time, it was a primary stack with Mahomes and also had Juju 17 points and Travis Kelce 23.5 points. So, it wasn't that stack was crazy because DFS Army was all over Patrick Mahomes and, his pass catchers and, and the running backs going against Houston's defense. And I know the Domination Station both loved Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon. But what was really crazy about this lineup is the secondary stack. Nobody was really on Tyler Algier and Rashid Shaheed. This stack, though, was good from a direct leverage standpoint because Alvin Kamara was chalk, and to a lesser degree, Chris Olave. But both of these stacks combined for 155 points and total ownership 79%. So moving along to the ownership really low, right? Overall, extremely low. Had Mahomes at 9%, 11% for Jerick McKinnon, and then Tyler Algier, less than a fraction of a percentage point. Just crazy to see a guy like that in the Milly Maker. That just goes to show what a crazy play it was. AJ Brown 8%, Juju 8%. Zay Jones ended up being chalk, and my thought process here, because I did have some Zay Jones, was, Trayvon Diggs is probably going to be on Christian Kirk, so Zay Jones would be the better play. A lot of the field thought that too because Kirk was low owned and Zay Jones was chalk, and Zay Jones smashed. Travis Kelce was chalk in Mahomes lineups, of course, because you have a lot of cheap stacking options outside of Kelce, so you could stack Mahomes +2, +3, and it's pretty cheap across the board outside of Kelce. And then Rashid Shaheed, 3%. He's been kind of one of the young surprises of the year. Doesn't go off every week, but has had several spike weeks, and certainly this was one of them. And then Titans D at 4%. And, I think the field just kind of avoided this because the Chargers, they had all their pass catchers. They were healthy. This was a high game total. So, and the Titans defense, they're bad against They're bad secondary. They're bad against the wide receivers. So they were almost stone cold minimum. They were only 2,200. Overall, 79%. It's the third lowest total we've seen on the season. And the seasonal average continues to keep tumbling because after 5 weeks of contrarian builds being atop the leaderboards, this is what we have now. After, we did have a good run of some very chalky builds winning the Milly Maker, but now it's been contrarian. So seasonal average 111%. And as long as we continue to have teams in prime matchups failing to deliver like the Chargers, we can expect these builds, these contrarian builds to win out, of course. And and that's more so what we expect in the Milly Maker anyways, a large field GPP. But as far as the top leverage plays, very much like week 14, this lineup was full of leverage plays. So we're just going to focus on just a few of them that really won out because, when you look at the lineup, it was just really just a couple chalky plays and a lot of leverage plays. So Jerick McKinnon, he broke the slate in week 14. You might think, oh, he's going to be highly owned, recency bias. Well, he wasn't really that highly owned considering how good the matchup was and because of his price. So, I guess everyone just thought he couldn't do it again. He did it again. He answered the bell again. So what was great about it specifically was he was direct leverage off of 25% owned Isaiah Pacheco in that game. AJ Brown, it's kind of the same thing here, right? Can he do it again? Well, if you looked at the Bears defense over the past month, 2 months of the season, they give up a lot of points. So now you have the number one offense really in the league with Hurts and AJ Brown and Miles Sanders and Devonta Smith. And, this was a great spot for AJ Brown again. So he was the second highest scoring wide receiver on the slate and he was under 10% owned. So great leverage play because there was a lot of chalk, obviously, in that Chargers game. There's Keenan Allen, there's Mike Williams, but also like Jamar Chase and then Garrett Wilson and CeeDee Lamb. So, yeah, Tyler Algier, we mentioned it, 4,700, and he was the fourth highest scoring running back and less than 0.5% owned. So extreme leverage. And then Shaheed, same thing. He almost 6x his salary at 3% ownership. So Zay and McKinnon, they, as you can see, McKinnon 6.5x, Zay 7x. They really outperformed their salary. And what was great about this lineup, besides obviously 2,200 tight defense, which just really outperformed in a bad matchup at low salary, you just kind of see why defense remains difficult to nail down. That's why you certainly want to take some chances, more so on defense and tight end if you can. But this was another week when the running back mess was just, and we'll see this kind of in the Milly Maker. This was a lot of the top pros MME strategy. We're just going to avoid the mess and just look for pay down options in good matchups. And we're going to use the salary savings to afford studs like Mahomes in this lineup, for example, AJ Brown at 8,000 and Travis Kelce at 7,800. And it really was the difference because the other lineup that finished in the Milly Maker in the top two, finished second, actually had both Henry and Stevenson in it. But to do that, had not paid up at wide receiver, right? So its highest price wide receiver was 4,900, which is just crazy to me to build a lineup like that. God, I thought this lineup was an outlier. That one was an extreme outlier to get that high. And but yeah, oh, by the way, it had Zacchaeus from Atlanta. He scored 0 in that lineup, which an 11-point difference in between first and second. And you got a guy that puts a 0 up. That'll do it. You're not going to be able to lose. Not going to be able to win in putting up a 0, of course, in the Milly Maker. But yeah, as we, have found by looking at the Milly Maker in past years, most of the time paying down at running back really is the best way to win the Milly Maker, as these expensive backs they're generally just cost prohibitive to carving out a well-balanced lineup that can score a lot of points, score over 230. Now, our ceiling, what stood out to me about this lineup when I was really thinking about it, 5 of the 6 past weeks, we have seen a winning Milly Maker build score under 239 points. So scoring has been down, but it hasn't necessarily all been because the scoring in the games were down. For example, because last week we had 272 points right? And the ceiling obviously is high when you have a lot of high game totals. So this week, the game totals weren't low, but what really happened was the field just kind of got it wrong. And we went in on several players that just didn't live up to their ownership. So, for example, we had Chris Moore. He was 30% owned. Mike Williams was 30% owned. Keenan Allen, 28% owned. Jamar Chase, 22% owned. And Kamara, 20% owned. So when you have this many players that the field is on, obviously these lineups are kind of dead from first place. So that was really the result here because we had game totals with 54, 57, 54, and 74. So when you target the right games, obviously your ceiling is much higher. So despite how good Vegas really is in setting game totals, they will miss the mark. You can't get everything right. There's just a lot of variance in football. So we obviously have to take that in consideration with building our lineups. And this lineup certainly did that with the Chiefs onslaught stack, just targeting one side of the game, and then just going in all in on a small secondary stack that nobody was on. So, but let's start to look at the MME strategy. So, spoiler alert, there was a couple of pros who did quite well. In fact, one of the top 10 DFS pros finished top 5 in the Milly Maker this week. So we're going to save that one best for last, and we're going to take a look at that. Now, last week, if you watched the podcast last week, I mentioned how, unfortunately, Osimo loves to play Trevor Lawrence. And the one week that he didn't play him last week was the week that you really needed to play him. Now, Trevor Lawrence followed that up by having a good week. But we will see here when we get into user exposures. No, the field was very low on Trevor Lawrence. He was 3% owned. Didn't matter. Osimo was 4x the field and still had a losing day. So last week really was the week to play him. He wasn't quite the nuts quarterback this week. Both Patrick Mahomes, as you will see here, top performing lineup, and Jalen Hurts both did very well. But Osimo, he continues with his style. He is going to do a lot of the heavier game stacks. So he had Patrick Mahomes, Jerick McKinnon, and Travis Kelce. So those three really well, obviously. And then he had a couple other stacks. So he had Latavius Murray, or just one other stack, Latavius Murray and the Denver defense. And those two really complemented each other really well. They correlated very well, obviously. Colt McCoy, and then Colt McCoy got hurt, and then they had a backup quarterback come in. And overall, there was 3 interceptions in that game, and you got some short fields. So Latavius Murray was running really well and smashed. And then Keenan Allen, Devonta Smith, Tyler Boyd, and then Chick. So this lineup scored 192 points, 131% owned. Back on the Trevor Lawrence train. So Lawrence, Etienne, Zay Jones, and then I bring back with CeeDee Lamb. And obviously another Kelce. Don't see this a whole lot. Travis Kelce stacked with the opposite defense. Hurts, A.J. Brown, and no bringbacks. Obviously, Hurts being more of a running quarterback. This is a lineup that you don't always have to force, double stacks, especially when they're expensive. But you can at times. So, kind of makes you wonder, did he run a batch of quarterback +1 and then quarterback +2, or did he just kind of just run it Jalen Hurts, no less than quarterback +1, and see, what the optimizer spit out? Also had a Montgomery bring back in that one. And a team stack of Texans, Lats Murray, James Conner, some of the more optimal plays. And then, Trevor Lawrence plus Etienne, Kirk, Zay Jones, brought back with Dalton Schultz. And so Osimo continues to use pretty heavy stacks. Good amount of Lawrence +2, +3 lineups. He was over the field on 5 running backs. And then he does do a lot of tight ends in the flex. So, again, this is something you don't want to do typically for cash games. You don't want that, and you don't want that kind of variance, but you will more so embrace it as we see here in large field GPPs, especially if you have like a Travis Kelce, who is a very expensive tight end, and you pair him with a cheaper one. So this is Lawrence +3, and bring back with Dalton Schultz. Lawrence +3, bring back with Schultz and Lamb. So, yeah, kind of the heavy stacks as we've alluded to. And then, yeah, this is kind of what I was mentioning earlier. I put out some lineups with Patrick Mahomes, Pacheco, and Jerick McKinnon. Now, Pacheco was off to a really good start, and then he had a fumble, and Andy Reid was like, nah, that's not happening. So he got benched for a little while, and that's really kind of what crushed his day. Who knows what the day would have held had he not fumbled. But Mahomes, Pacheco, McKinnon, and Juju with Akins bring back. Lawrence +4. Wow. All right. So as far as some of his exposures, we're going to get into real quick here. So pretty crazy. You got $6,000 Lawrence, who smashed. He was 4x the field. A lot of positive leverage there. Still had a losing day. And just kind of speaks to the payout structure of the Milly Maker. Tom Brady, Zach Wilson, Burrow, and Mahomes. So these were his, kind of surprised on the Zach Wilson, but, take some shots at 5,000, basically. And then under on Prescott and Hurts. Now, he was over the field on 5 running backs. So you'll notice, obviously, if you are under the field on Derrick Henry, which he was a little bit here, and on Sanders. So these were really the chalk: Sanders, Pacheco, Henry, and the Milly, and then Kamara as well. So he was under on those guys, but over on ETN, on Connor, on Latavius Murray, on Josh Jacobs, and Zonovan Ignite. So some good plays in here for sure. And some plays he probably wishes he had not had. Now, and I kind of mentioned this, a lot of the pros faded Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. And overall, if you faded them, it was a good day for the most part. But it's really what you did with the other parts of your lineup by fading these two. What other games did you attack? Obviously, but they obviously have the right mentality. If this game, these guys are too high owned, and they're definitely paths, because we've seen the Chargers offense is very up and down, and a lot of that can obviously be attributed to play calling. Some of it's on Herbert, but play calling, of course. But yeah, if you fade those games and they fail, which they failed several times this year, you're setting yourself up to do pretty well. So a little over on Devonta Smith and AJ Brown, not quite enough. But yeah, Zay Jones, that's a great call, but not over enough as you want to be there. And then definitely too much Amon-Ra. Good Godwin play. And then, yeah, when you have 2 tight ends who average, 60% exposure, just about, you're obviously going to have tight end in the flex quite a bit. So also Conklin 10%, Dulcich 14%, and Chig 14%. So some double tight ends there. And then another thing that the pros were doing most of the day is, even though the Broncos defense ended up smashing, they mostly were under the field there. And it's over the field on a lot of the contrarian plays at Tampa Bay, Arizona. If you can afford the pay up, Arizona was obviously a process right defense to play as well. So next pro we're going to look at, need lunch money. Positive ROI day. Now, need lunch money played a lot of running backs and faded Herbert. So, theme of the day. Gonna fade Herbert. Gonna fade that game. Ended up being a positive ROI day for him. Mahomes, McKinnon, Travis Kelce, and then bringing it back with both Chris Moore and Amari Rodgers. That was his top lineup. He also had a Stevenson, Zay Jones, and Keenan Allen all as a one-off, and Denver D. Pretty chalky lineup. 150%, 201 points. Wasn't duplicated, though. Not this one. More Mahomes. Another Hurts +1. I was getting a lot of Quez Watkins as well in my Hurts lineups in the domination station. So, shout out to Jesus, the DS, Mahomes, Juju, Travis Kelce, bringing it back with Chris Moore and Jordan Akins. And then, yeah, Austin Eckler, Latavius Murray. Eckler and Chargers defense were correlated together. So as far as his user exposures, Mahomes 27%, Jalen Hurts. So these were the two highest quarterbacks, and really DFS Army. These were our two highest as well because they were in smash spots as well as Justin Fields. Kind of, you don't need to stack him, but a really good one-off. But yeah, Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, they were in great matchups. Then we got Joe Burrow, 15% as well. And then, as I mentioned, under on Herbert and also under on Dak. And then Ramondre Sharp play, once I knew he was in, I started late swapping to him as much as I could, just at low ownership. And just the best matchup on the slate, really, in my opinion, especially at his price, $1,000 less than Derrick Henry. But Jacobs was a sharp play, too, just because of the run that he's been on. And, it was kind of pick the way you think that the Patriots are going to try to stop the Raiders. So Jacobs, ETN. So over on a lot of running backs, kind of as I mentioned, over the field on 10 running backs. And then really going to fade the chalk here. So Henry, Pacheco, Miles Sanders, didn't like that chalk. And I get it. These are obviously, good ways to kind of leverage the field here when, a third of the field is going to be on a running back, for example. So Stevenson, Jacobs, ETN, Kamara, Zonovan McKnight, Latavius Murray, Austin Eckler, James Conner, Joe Mixon, Jacoby. So pay down at wide receiver as well. So fading. So really didn't go cheap at running back, right? So obviously faded Henry, but Stevenson isn't cheap. Josh Jacobs isn't cheap. Kamara, ETN, these guys weren't really cheap either. And then, went more or less, didn't pay all the way up, didn't do a ton of like Jamar Chase, for example. Didn't have Adams, a ton of exposure there. So pay down at wide receiver as well. Myers, Watkins, Deontay, Chris Godwin. These are the highest exposure wide receivers. And, Chris Godwin being the most expensive is 6,700. So naturally, probably going to have a fair amount of like Kelce too. So the quarterbacks that he had, more so on the expensive side, Mahomes and Hurts. Keenan Allen, even there. But yeah, not a lot of Chase. Faded Williams. Not a lot of Lamb either. But yeah, boom, there you have it. 7,800 Kelce. 32% exposure there in his Mahomes stacks, which are obviously very expensive. some Dolchich, Schultz, Chig. Tampa Bay, Tennessee. And just a little under the field on Denver defense. So Chipotle Addict kind of fallen a little bit. Not having his best year, but he's probably due, right? So he was in the top 5. I think he's fallen a little bit. I think he's like just outside the top 5 right now for top DFS pros. And his top lineup, but he pretty good day, right? From an MME standpoint. I mean, he only lost $60 and, $3,500 to enter the Milly. So Travis Lawrence, ETN, and Zay Jones. So Lawrence +2 with a Schultz bring back, Latavius Murray, Jamar Chase, Deontay. And he had another stack in here as well. Derrick Henry and Tennessee D, 120%. So he doesn't do a whole lot of heavy stacks. That's one thing I noticed about Chipotle Addict. He's more about, quarterback +1, +2, and then, more optimal plays. But unfortunately, it's just kind of been harder to win with that, each and every week. But Mahomes, Brady, Mac Jones, Burrow. So great having that much Mahomes, 34%. And then he faded Hurts and Herbert. Great job fading Herbert. Not so good fading Hurts. And he also faded Henry and Pacheco, which we'll see here. Now, not a complete fade on Henry. Obviously 18%, but was really half the field there. And then, went for a lot of the cheaper running backs. ETN, Donovan McKnight, Latavius Murray, James Conner, Alvin Kamara, over 10% on Josh Jacobs. And kind of the same thing, as we saw with Need Lunch Money, which really there wasn't a big difference in their ROI. I'm going to fade some of the more expensive running backs. And we're going to be in on Mahomes and Kelsey, but obviously going to do pay downs as well at wide receiver. So Elijah Jacoby Myers, Chris Moore, 54%, Godwin. 26%, Evans, 22%. So also quite a bit of exposure to mid-range, Godwin, Evans, and then not a ton of exposure to Adams, only 14%, but a good amount to Jamar Chase. So that might be the highest pay up. Let's see. We'll look at Kelsey, but obviously Chase was a little bit more expensive than Kelsey, 500 more, 31% over the field there. Zay Jones, smash play, over the field. Then faded Allen, Garrett Wilson, and especially Wilson. I mean, the fact that he was 17% owned after Zach Wilson was announced as a starter because Mike White was injured, that was just crazy to me. I really thought the field was going to fade him entirely. And they did in cash, but they still played him in the Milly, which is wild. But yeah, look at that. So that's kind of where the money savings went. Going to pay down at running back. 34% exposure to Jamar Chase, 64% exposure to Travis Kelce in Mahomes stacks, obviously. And, oh, by the way, also had quite a bit of Burrow, too. So a good amount, 12%. So Kelce, Schultz, Chig. So definitely going to be some double tight end lineups as well with Chipotle Addict. Now, the last two that we are going to look at both had positive ROI, so we're going to save the best for last for big day. But this player, BGRESETH, is a top 6 player in the world right now currently. So there it is. His top lineup. Now, what's crazy with this lineup MME, 150 entries, $3,500. Didn't really finish too high, but had a lot of lineups like in, as you'll see, this one's 916, 975, 1011. So just getting really good ROI on a lot of these lineups between like, the top 900, the top 2000 of the Milly Maker. So that was really what made the day. So, not a top 5 lineup or anything, or a top 10 or top 20, but just very consistent in this range. So Lawrence, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, no bring back. Lawrence, Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram. So pretty heavy sacks. Lawrence, Etienne, Kirk, Zay Jones, Schultz bring back. So just very good lineups, just scoring, over 180 points. Lawrence, Etienne, Kirk, Zay Jones. And really, most people weren't on Trevor Lawrence this week because Dallas, they have a pretty good defense. And so a lot of these guys were low owned, but it just takes, one pro to be on them. And then playing the other side too, Dak, CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, bring back with Zay Jones. Lawrence, Etienne, Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram. So Lawrence +4. The really heavy game stacks like this, it's pretty awesome to be able to have a positive ROI day and do these game stacks. And that just goes to show that, Lawrence had a pretty good day. Most of the time, this is a losing formula, but over the long run, very positive EV, because had this game gone off, or like really gone off on both sides, like we saw with Detroit and Seattle, this is what takes to win, large field GPP. This is really the best way to win it over the long run if this is your lineup construction that you stick to. So it was very heavy on this game, obviously. We'll take a look at the quarterback exposures. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of Lawrence. So, yeah, Lawrence and Dak, they were the top 3 highest exposures. Lawrence, Dak, Jalen Hurts, a little bit of Burrow, under the field on Herbert, under the field on Mahomes. Had he had a good amount of Mahomes too, would have been a better day for sure. And this is a positive ROI day for him. So very good. Now, obviously going down to Lawrence, the cash savings, playing Lawrence and Dak versus like Mahomes or Hurts, it's more feasible to be able to play Derrick Henry at 51%. So being over the field here, and it just kind of makes you think about lineup construction, how you kind of Tetris your lineup. I play Mahomes, I can't play Henry. If I play Hurts, I can't play Henry. Oh, but if I play this game, I could play Henry. So ended up working out. So Jacobs, also a lot of Jacobs, Murray, and then, yeah, a lot of running back exposures over 25%, 24.5-ish. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then Fada, Sanders, Pacheco, McKinnon. Probably wish she would have had a little bit more McKinnon. Might have won the whole thing. Who knows? Stevenson, good amount of Stevenson too. So, so Jacoby Myers, obviously some pay down options. If you're going to pay up for Henry, paying down. Jacoby Myers, 18%. Christian Kirk, 17%. DJ Moore, more Godwin, kind of ball between 16 and 19% here. Some Zay Jones, that smashed, obviously, in Trevor Lawrence sacks. Awesome. Devonta Smith, CeeDee Lamb, both in Dak and Lawrence sacks as a bring back. Evans, Olave, even with the field on Jamar Chase. under on Wilson and Moore, under on Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. So fading those two certainly helps. Dalton Schultz. So obviously that was a game that was targeted. So tons of Dalton Schultz exposure, 55%. And every time I play Dalton Schultz, why does Hendershot get all the touchdowns? I mean, it just drives me nuts. I just need to play Hendershot, I guess. And then, over on the Denver defense. So this was obviously a great play. Didn't matter how chalky they were. They smashed. They were 2,700. So that's exactly what you want. And it really just very high exposure to them. It was a smash spot, and it paid off for him or her. So last one, I think it's top 100 DFS player in the world. Saw this name, heard this person on a podcast. So, I know they are a DFS Pro, MME. So it was good to see someone, kind of as we went over with Osimo a few weeks ago, it was good to see an MME Pro who will most weeks kind of have a losing week in the Milly Maker because of the payout structure and just because of MME, it's so hard. But, putting in lineups with the idea that, was just that one slate that's going to make the year. So, and you'll see when we get into it, really, this was just one lineup that made all the bacon, right? So if it wasn't for this one lineup, we're talking about a losing day. But that's what it is. It's one lineup. It's one slate. That's all it takes. So had a Tom Brady, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage. No bring back, just Tom Brady +2. David Montgomery, Latavius Murray, and Zay Jones. And then we have Travis Kelce as well. So we did have another stack in here. Derrick Henry and Tennessee D, 100%. Total ownership, 218 points. So really good lineup. Good enough for 5th place in the Milly Maker. Very contrarian. Second place, or second lineup. Another Brady lineup. Brady, Godwin, Gage. This one had a Joe Mixon bring back. Probably wish he did not have a Joe Mixon bring back. And then pretty wild to see 2 running backs on the same game. Especially, when they're not like a Eckler type of big pass catching back. So Latavius Murray, James Conner. Zay Jones is a one-off. Travis Kelce and Tennessee D. So we'll take a look at Brick's exposures. Obviously had the top 5 finish, which made the day. Over on Brady. And not afraid to play anyone, right? Play anyone GPPs. That's what I always say. You can play anyone in a large field GPP. Colt McCoy, 11%. Justin Herbert, basically just even with the field. So was one of the pros that didn't fade Justin Herbert, but it didn't matter, right? This would have been a losing day by not fading Justin Herbert. But Brick had that one lineup that placed 5 in the Milly Maker, so nothing else really mattered. Under on Dak, under on Mahomes, under on Jalen Hurts. So another running back exposure group of 5 running backs with very high exposure. So we have over 26%. So ETN, Murray, Derrick Henry, and then Alvin Kamara as well. James Conner, Eckler as well. But then fading Pacheco was the call. So under the field on Pacheco, under the field on Zonovan Knight. I wish I had been under the field on both of those players too, especially Zonovan Knight. Obviously, with being even with the field on Herbert, going to have some Keenan Allen lineups too. So over the field there. over on Marquise Brown and DeAndre Hopkins because obviously had 11% Colt McCoy. Some Garrett Wilson over the field there. So nothing exciting here with the exception of Gage and Godwin. And didn't matter because I had that one lineup. So that's really what we're just going to go back to here. The one lineup that won 20,000. Now, the smart fade of the day, though, was also fading Mike Williams. So having Keenan Allen, but fading Williams, fading Jamar Chase. Chase had a good day, but not nearly enough for his salary. Travis Kelce. So, yeah, definitely going to have some double tight ends. Kelce, Dalton Schultz, Jordan Akins, Gerald Everett. In fact, we'll scroll through here. I'm sure we'll see a few double tight end lineups. Evan Ingram, Travis Kelce. Akins and Kelce. Not a ton, but a couple. And, Travis Kelce, Noah Gray. Double tight end on the same team. That's one you don't see a whole lot. But, yeah, definitely a way to get cheap. But all it takes is one lineup, obviously. Congrats to Brick 75, taking 5 in the Milly Maker, winning 20 Gs. Almost a, positive ROI, but almost a clean $20,000 ROI on the day. That's going to do it for this week of our MME Milly Maker review. If you like this kind of content, please hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and share, and hit that notification button so you never miss an episode. We've got a lot of content coming out this week. Obviously, things are different this week. We've got the Saturday main slate, and obviously that's going to be our GPP Tournament Tactics show. So you want to make sure you are subscribed, hit that notification button so you don't miss that one when we go live. And then we got a 3-day slate on Monday. So for the holidays, we have all the DFS. I hope your family loves DFS because it's a great weekend for that. So that's going to do it. Good luck. We will see you all next week.